Hi, I'm Paul Duchesne. Today is Saturday, July the 24th, 2021, and welcome to Mama Paul's video podcast. I frequently do little summaries of the New York Times or Rachel Maddow. I also, just as a matter of fact, listen to Thom Hartmann frequently. My wife has a subscription to him. Richard Wolff is also on the radar. Every week I try to plug into Richard Wolff's a rap about what's going on with the economy. I get a local newspaper in addition to the New York Times, so it's not just a narrow focus of information, but I'm trying to bring in more information than just those two or three, four things. I also listen to NPR quite a bit. NPR isn't quite as progressive as they used to be. I think it was like 6 years ago that the Koch brothers made a substantial contribution to NPR about the time when they were about to put a movie out about the Koch brothers and their influence on the country. Well, the Koch brothers didn't want that movie on NPR, so they made a huge donation to National Public Radio, and ever since, National Public Radio has been a little bit more to the right. I used to listen to KPFA and Pacifica Radio more. I listen to them sometimes. Half the time there's music and cultural shows, and I'm not sure what they've got on half the time anymore. But there's a lot of controversy going on within the station, and you can hear it bleeding through from their national headquarters to their local groups. There's a little bit of a controversy. Okay, so as far as Rachel goes, the three main topics that she covers week after week after week have been the COVID crisis, the Stop the Steal crisis, or the voter intimidation, or the voting restrictions, and the Afghanistan situation. Let's start with the last one first. With the Afghanistan situation, we're withdrawing from Afghanistan, and the fear is that these translators that are there are not going to be able to get out. So there's been a huge push, and it was a veterans group that's got ads on television about this, to get the administration to put the means in place to get these people out of there. Rachel has been covering this literally night after night. Rachel Maddow is extremely progressive. She's also extremely pro-military. And she's been over the war zone. She's written about the situation in the service, and she's very, 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 very connected with what's going on in the military, and is very pro-military. Just to get that really clear. And the translators being left behind in Afghanistan is a serious, serious problem. And there's thousands of people there that are being affected by this. And as we started this withdrawal, which we maybe started too fast, the Taliban is coming in. They know who these translators are. And these people and their families' lives are all in danger. Seriously, in danger. And the paperwork in the United States and the Republican throwing little roadblocks in the way has been causing a little bit of a consternation. We finally have some movement. We finally got an okay that we're going to send some people to Kuwait and another country over here. We're opening up a military base here. We're trying to accelerate the process for getting the paperwork done. And last but not least, as of today, Joe Biden just signed $100 million from the U.S. Emergency Refugee Fund to help move these people along. There's also, I believe, some airstrikes going on in Afghanistan right now. I suspect this has got to do with the fact that they're going to try to push the Taliban back a little bit so that they can get these people out, and that's what the airstrikes are about. Now, from my perspective, they should have just stopped the withdrawal, reoccupy the country, get these people out, then withdraw. But that's not exactly what's going on. At least there is a possibility that they are going to succeed in getting quite a few of these people out. So that's a good point. And like I said, Rachel's been on this night after night, probably the only person on national television who's been on this night after night after night, and finally something is getting done. So as far as the virus goes, another bad week for the virus. Cases are spiking all over the country, especially in Texas and I think Missouri and Florida. And it's basically an epidemic of the unvaccinated. The vaccinated are coming down with COVID, maybe 3 to 5%, and the few that do don't wind up in the hospital, they don't wind up dying. So there's a little bit of a bleed through, but not much and not severe. Whereas the unvaccinated people rather, are coming down with the COVID and winding up in the hospital. And famously, we even had this one guy that was interviewed in the hospital this week, and he's standing by his principles that he's not going to get vaccinated while they're getting ready to intubate him. And they showed him a picture of one of his congressmen who had finally changed his position. The Republicans en masse have been changing their position all week, and I think it may have to do with the fact that there's a class action lawsuit getting put together against Fox News and all of these people for spreading these lies. So this guy's laying in bed there, and he couldn't believe that that his representative had flipped his position and was now recommending people get the vaccine. He still refused it at the end. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect going on is just as of today, it seems as if the vaccinations may be good for 6 to 9 months. So there's reports coming out of Israel right now, and the CDC is looking into this extensively. So I had the Pfizer vaccine back in the end of January, beginning of February. This is now 6 months later, August. I'm old. I'm not necessarily immunocompromised, but I am not young, that's for sure. And I've got breathing issues, so I may be on the list of people who are going to be eligible for a third shot soon. So they're talking about a booster shot after 6 to 9 months. So that's in the works right now. Everything else about this whole virus thing is getting a little bit nuts. People are meeting in large stadiums, baseball games, football games, all sorts of places, music concerts. The spike that we're experiencing right now is, you may notice, 2 weeks after the July 4th weekend. Hello? Any connection there? Good chance there is. And now we've got concerts, we've got summer events happening, we've got people filling up these stadiums. Not looking too good. I think, well, the point is, we're going to see spikes continuing throughout the summer. And there's this 20% of the people, 20+% of the people who are vehemently opposed to getting the vaccine. Which means that there's a good chance we're going to keep this thing going because these other people refuse to get it. They keep spreading the virus. The Delta variant now has a new variant in, which is even more dangerous than the first variant. So as a population exists in order to get infected, these variants start to work. They figure out what's wrong and they figure out what they can do. There's a sort of a consciousness to these viruses. They figure out what they can do to infect the next person. So that's why they're always getting a little bit worse, a little bit worse. You've got to get the population inoculated so that people can't get, so that the virus can't spread. And that's not happening. Not in our politically divided mess we've got going. The third issue that she dealt with is the Stop the Steal campaign. Let me just run over here for a quick second. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, January 6th was the insurrection, and today is July 24th, and the Donald is on his way to, I think, Phoenix, Arizona, or someplace in Arizona for a rally centered around the cyber ninjas audit of the Arizona election. And what these people have been talking about is August. And I keep mentioning this because I am concerned. I am concerned that we're looking at another January event back in August. And being that we have Republicans in Washington who are still not acknowledging the violent overthrow that attempted to happen back here, and that this was sort of a bunch of tourists running around Washington. And the Donald this week even talked about it. A nice crowd of good people. Can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. It's 1984, and we're staring at it right in the face. But the whole point of this Stop the Steal thing, Trump has been lying since he was in high school, throughout college, as a real estate developer. his whole career is built on lying, cheating, and stealing. The people in New York recognized his lying, cheating, stealing, and philandering a long time ago, and he became a buffoon in New York. Well, a buffoon in New York winds up being the Elmer Gantry for the rest of the country, and I don't get how they buy all this stuff from him. The man lied every day in office. You would wake up in the morning, oh, what did he say today? What did he say today? You know, and after 4 years of this, suddenly his lie about the election, which he started back in August because he knew he was going to lose. He started lying in August, saying that if he did lose, it would have to have been that they cheated. So naturally he lost. So naturally they cheated. It's logically illogical, everything that comes out of his mouth. Yet the party buys it. So he starts with the lie, and back after January, a lot of people thought that Biden even said the rest of the Republicans are going to start to get their heads together and recognize what's going on. Well, they haven't, and it keeps getting worse. And the whole Republican Party is now, they know they can't win an election. They certainly don't have any policies or any programs or anything. So all they want to do is raise up the white supremacists, get rid of the black, Hispanic, LBGT, young people voting, narrow their base as much as possible, get rid of the rest of the people from voting, and they want to steal the election. They want to steal all the elections right now. Trump's whole idea was to raise money on this Stop the Steal BS. So his political action committee has raised over $100 million. $75 million has gone not to Arizona to replace the voting machines or to pay for the Cyber Ninja things, or to the Pennsylvania, Fulton County, who has to replace their voting machines, or to the Michigan, or to the case against the Kraken lawyers. None of it's going to any of that. It's all going to Donald. To Donald and his entourage, his meals, probably his wig or whatever he's got on his hair there. The money's coming directly to him. These PACs don't have to put the money back into a political situation. He can use it to write checks, to pay for his entourage, to pay for his golf course or his golf clubs or whatever. So it's his money. So over $100 million raised, and $75 million of that has gone directly to him to pay for his expenses. This is nuts. This whole thing is a fundraising campaign. I think Rachel about 2 nights ago, maybe Wednesday night, called it a world-class grift, as in grifters, a world-class grift. The Republicans have passed voting laws, 30 different restrictive voting laws in 18 different states, and there is not one case of voter fraud, other than a couple of people who voted for Trump using their dead father or their dead mother. Well, a couple of Trump people voted. Other than that, there was no voter fraud, and if there was, it was maybe 2 people out of 2 million. There's no voter fraud in the country. There's no voter fraud. People don't show up at the polling booth with phony IDs, trying to vote and everything. It's absolutely ridiculous. Everything's coming out of their mouth is absolutely ridiculous, but it keeps going on. It's not good. It's not good at all. All right, so that was that. The last part of it, well, Afghanistan. The statement that Rachel made at the maybe a couple of weeks ago is that we're there till the very end. She's going to cover the story until everybody is out of there. And I believe it. She's done it with a few issues, and she stays on these topics. So she's not necessarily reporting the news for the day, although as news breaks for the day, she might squeeze it in. But she does for bigger stories, and she goes much deeper into them. And the Afghanistan thing is an absolute stinking crime. It really is. Last but not least, at the end of the show, she had Ben Rhodes on, and if there's my copy of the book, and I could bring it up on the big screen here. I think I have it. Yeah, there it is. Let me bring it on the big screen for a second. After the fall, Ben Rhodes, Being American in the World We've Made. Being American in the World We've Made by Ben Rhodes. And Ben Rhodes was a speechwriter, and he worked with Barack Obama during his presidency. And during that time, when he left office after Barack Obama, he could have taken on any number of interesting positions, made a lot of money and things like this, but he didn't. He went around the world visiting mostly 3 countries. He mostly went to Hungary, China, and Russia. And what he's talking about are the effects of the authoritarians in these countries and how it's affecting the whole world. The most interesting statement, I'm going to read this. This was out of the book review that was in the New York Times about 2 weeks ago here. The United States, having exported to the world unleashed capitalism, ungoverned social media, and a militarized foreign policy. Unleashed capitalism, unregulated social media, and a militarized foreign policy, has now seen its pathologies weaponized by its enemies and turned back upon itself. Laws and norms were for the weak, and the strong could do anything they wanted. We unleashed the genie of social media, and Putin sends out his hackers and trolls to undermine the West. He sees himself, Rhodes, as angry at what America has become. 4 years of Donald Trump seem to have unseated the patient incrementalism that Obama instilled in the country over the time. And he ends it with what is considered the funniest line in the whole book. And it's a quote from Obama. "A Trump is for a lot of white people what OJ's acquittal was to a lot of black folks. You know it's wrong, but it feels good. You know it's wrong, but it feels good." Ben Rhodes was talking the other day about how we need to clean up our democracy. What an understatement. And Ben Rhodes sees the democracy as sort of really collapsing since Trump was in office. I would go a step further than that, and I would say the democracy has been collapsing for a long time now, for a really long time now. But he's on there, and the interesting connection he made was with China, and how in China, well, just the other day in China, they arrested people who published a comic book, and the comic book was a very political comic book. Now, Rachel, when she did the story last night, I read it in the New York Times the day before. The comic book was a direct attack on the Chinese government, and they talked about people that were in a boat, and they talked about people that were chasing the people in the boat, and the numbers were representative of an incident that happened in China about half a year ago. So they did it in the form of a comic book in order to make it look not, turn it into a little humor or something, whatever. Chinese government arrested the whole group of them the other day, and while they're being arrested, the people from if you remember the Apple News, I think that's the name of the newspaper, the Apple newspaper in China, which was the last real journalism going on in Hong Kong. They shut that paper down about 2 weeks ago, and they started to arrest people. Well, 2 of the people were in court the other day, and the court pretty much didn't make a decision on them, held them in court, and the court then went on recess for the summer, so they're not going to be back until September. So these guys are thrown in jail from now until September, when they can finally have their first day in court, which I'm sure is not going to wind up with them getting released. But the interesting thing is that the People's Republic of China, the PRC, has state control over what's going on in the media. State control. So the state's coming in and saying, oh, you can't do this, the newspapers can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, we're going to get oppressive. In America, we have private business is watching everything we do. Your telephone, everything you buy. We have been commodified completely. So in China, you have the state attempting, the state party, the Communist Party attempting to control things. In America, you have big business trying to control things, and big business then affects the state by lobbying for their own laws. So there's similar things going on in both countries. The difference is we don't see it as obviously here. The water is boiling very slowly here, and the lobster isn't quite catching on that the water is going to kill him eventually, and that's what I feel like is going on here right now. The last thing I'm going to mention is, I'm 20 minutes in, the show on Frontline. There was a show on Frontline about 2 weeks ago, and it was about the Fed. And I talked about this about 6 months ago on one of the shows. Quantitative easing. Quantitative easing basically means that the Fed is printing money directly and not necessarily going through the Treasury to do it. Since the collapse of the economy back in 2008, what happened was the Fed started to buy bonds from corporations at zero interest, basically giving corporations huge amounts of money at zero interest, which is why one of the reasons why you're not getting any interest on your little savings account there has got to do with this whole thing. And it's been going on since 2008. Well, it used to be that the banks used to buy the bonds from the corporation, but now the Fed is directly buying the bonds from the corporation. Their own stocks, then they then get the money, and then they're buying back their own stock. So as they buy back their own stock, the price of the stock goes up. The value of the company might be going down, but the stock price is going up, and that's pretty much what's happening. And this is a huge issue. All during the pandemic, millions of people are sitting at home, barely able to pay their rent, barely able to get food on the table. The middle class is shrinking, the lower class is getting crushed, and the upper, the wealthy, and the people with all their money in Wall Street are making a fortune. Mostly the people who are in the company and the heads of the company. So the CEOs, the CFOs, all the OOs are getting this money from the government, buying their own stock, increasing the value of the stock. This has been going on since 2008. This is 21, 10, 11, 12, 13 years. 2 or 3 stops along the way. A lot of major economists were worried that this was getting to be too big a bubble. It's a debt bubble. A debt bubble. This could be worse than the housing bubble back in 2008. And there's a lot of people very nervous about this because they're going to have to start to increase the tax rate, increase the interest rate. And they're worried about, do we do it? How much of a 0.5% at a time can we do it? As soon as they did it a little while ago, there was a huge outcry from the Wall Street people, huge outcry, and the Feds backed off. And this is what's been going on. They like getting money for free. It increases their value, their worth, and everything. Everybody else is getting screwed. It's a Frontline show 2 weeks ago, July 13th. If you have a chance, check it out. It's well worth watching. And on that note, peace, patience, persistence, and we'll see you as soon as I can. Take care.